CEO at SHOWHEROES. His name is Ilhan Zengin. He's going to talk to us about how to conquer the age of video. Thank you.
A round of applause,
Thank
Ilhan.
you. Hey guys, thank you. So let's see. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, hi, welcome to the Digital Freedom Festival 2019. Also for me, I'm Ilhan, CEO and one of the founders of SHOWHEROES. To be honest, like yesterday, I was in Hamburg around noon, and I gave more or less the same presentation in German to a bunch of like advertising and publisher nerds. And that's actually our target group, like our audience you would usually speak to, or I will usually speak to sell our product. But of course, like now, you guys are not target audience. So for us, it's more like trying to build the bridge, crossing the gap into talking about something like what is the age of video all about, why is video such a mega trend, because I assume that you are no experts in the field of digital video advertising. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Is there anyone out here who's a professional in terms of video advertising, or is there anyone at least perfect, or maybe any influencers? That usually happens more often than not. Okay, so I'll try, bear with me, I'll just try to swap stuff a little bit back and forth, just so we can have a more lively discussion around the topic in general. Because I think the space itself is very vibrant, and the space itself is interesting because it affects all of us anyway. So I'll try to swap it a little bit. But generally the topic is conquer the age of video, and what we're usually trying to do is we try to give an overview about how the space video looks like nowadays. And what the nice moderator, I forgot his name, just said in the beginning, it's very true, you know, like video these days, it has changed a lot because we are consuming video as a medium differently compared to video was consumed just a couple of years ago. I mean, just think about the transition from video coming from the large screen linear TV towards where it is today, usually at younger audiences on a smartphone, watching lots of video on demand, shorter stories on Instagram and so on and so forth. And if you now put yourself in the position or into the shoes of some brand executive, you know, who needs to run some marketing for his brand or for her brand in order to reach the target audience, of course you need to pay attention to how the consumption patterns of the new target audiences are changing these days in the mega trend video. So that's basically what we're going to talk about quickly in the beginning, because this is exactly what I'm doing this year. Is I also would love to advertise my company. This is SHOWHEROES. We come from Berlin. We founded 2016 in Berlin. It's Europe's fastest growing independent video platform, and we provide video solutions for publishers, for advertisers, for brands. We produce video content, but we especially distribute video content at scale. So that's the advertising part of the game. And we have offices in Berlin, in Hamburg, Moscow, Vienna, Paris, Amsterdam, and of course in Riga. And this is why I'm here, because we started basically the company in Berlin, but a couple of months later we moved to Riga. It's our biggest office, almost 40 employees. Some of them are around here as well. And we are always looking for, you know, great new talent and people who want to join the family. So if you're interested into that after that presentation still, you can of course hit me up, or my colleagues. You will recognize us because we are always wearing those nice t-shirts in the green color, okay? So now let's get back to media and to the topic of today's session. I mean, what we have here is something about ad spends. It's about ad spends that have moved from, and that's more or less obvious, traditional media towards digital media, right? And if you have a look at it, usually people on those conferences will always say, yeah, Ilhan, why are you basically borrowing myself or me as a person, as a visitor, as the audience with those charts? Because everyone knows that digital, of course, is a big trend, and traditional media is more or less on the decline. That is true to a certain extent, but then again, on the other hand, what you should bear in mind is that the trend has been there for quite a while, but actually the trend has most recently materialized. Because if you have a look at the numbers over here, it doesn't really work, the laser pointer, but here, 2019, you see the tipping point has been reached this year. So this year, and those are US numbers, globally, on this case in the US, which is always a good role model, and there has been spent more money for advertising on digital media compared to traditional media, which is a proof of concept, I should say. And if you now look how the trend is evolving over time, you can also see that by no means traditional media is on a, well, hardcore decline, I should say. What you can see is it's more a slowly but surely degenerating flat, but it's nothing really bad. So like TV and print and out of home still is relevant. Like reading a book still is relevant, and it's not going to disappear tomorrow. But what you can also see is that the growth, because we are consuming as users more and more digital media, the growth in terms of spends, of course, is deriving, this is the red column here, from digital. So the delta is deriving from digital. And this is why it's such a hype topic. And we are all about the hype train in the industry. And there are like so many trends in the industry over the last couple of years being discussed around the topic digital, you know. And it's usually about native forms of advertising, which is like kind of below the line advertising, like advertorial, if that makes sense for you guys. Mobile is very important, and programmatic advertising is also very important, but just basically means that stuff is traded more or less like an auction compared to buy and sell stuff manually. But nowadays, it's all different. Nowadays, the biggest trend basically is video, because we have a huge shift from TV towards digital, as I said, and this is primarily affecting younger audiences, like more or less us here in this building, right? Because we are consuming, I can see the people here, of course, in the front row, always messaging, which is fine, you know, go ahead. I'm not putting you on the spot. Maybe I did. But, you know, in the end, it's a good precedent for what we are doing. We are always consuming in a different way. And the younger the audience, the light TV viewers, they usually say in the media industry, you can't reach them on the large screen anymore. You can only reach them with a small screen. And even if you want to target them with video advertising needs to be on mobile, as you see it here at the upper left corner. Yeah, and then of course, storytelling is also a big topic, because the biggest platforms globally are used, especially if you talk about mobile devices, for watching videos. What are those, in your opinion? Where is video watched the most globally? Any ideas? Very good point. It's the second place. What is the first place? You know it for sure. It's Facebook, still, you know. So, and where are Facebook and YouTube used the most? On smartphones, right? So like basically no one, especially Facebook or Instagram, is using that on a desktop. And I'm not even sure if it works with Instagram on desktop. So it does work? Okay, I don't have Instagram myself, I'm too old already. But you can, of course, use it on mobile, and on mobile everyone is doing so. So the biggest platforms are those. And storytelling works in a completely different way on smartphones compared to the large screens. And why is that the case? Because the aspect ratio is different, right? The screen is smaller, it's not 16:9, it's more 1:1 aspect ratio. You usually have less time when you're engaging with content, so you would be more in a lean forward type of situation like this, and trying to interact with the content compared to leaning back on the sofa, having a couple of snacks, maybe a beer if you drink alcohol, otherwise a water, and, you know, try to enjoy a movie. Different consumption pattern, different level of attention you bring to the table, and obviously different way a story needs to be designed. Like a huge, I'm not sure, but I don't think that Netflix creates a lot of video views on smartphones unless people are on an airplane. An airplane, I witnessed that last night on my flight from Berlin here to Riga. Like in the airplane, almost everyone was streaming on an iPad or on a smartphone Netflix. But who else does that when you are at home? I mean, you use your TV for that, or maybe your computer. Or maybe I'm wrong. Who is watching Netflix with a smartphone at home? Yes, no one. Perfect, thank you. So this is why storytelling is different, because on Instagram and on Facebook, a video is also shorter. It's usually 30 to 90 seconds long, it autoplays, and maybe you have a text overlay so you can read what the video is supposed to communicate, supposed to transmit, right? So it's different. We understand that. The spends are rising as well, and so on and so forth. So you can make the point that nowadays we are really live in the age of video. And the reason for that is that we as users, we are actually turning the digital age in general, if you will, into the nowadays age of video. And how do we do that? By basically consuming. as I made the point already before. And we have asked a couple of, no, we haven't. It's a Salesforce study that we basically always use to bring our point across, but I think it works out perfectly, because if you look at the first bubble, right, it says that 95% of all users, they prefer watching a video because they can retain the message better if they're watching a video compared to written text. And just to give you a hint, like a benchmark number, a lower benchmark number is just 10% when reading text. I think it's kind of worrying that only like 10% of a message is retained when you read the text. Maybe people suffer of legasthenia more these days, but video seems to be the solution, because you can just lean back or lean forward and consume and you get the message, right? So 60% of users, they say they would rather watch video online than TV. I think this number can still go up a little bit, you know. We should do the same survey a couple of years later. And last but not least, and I think this is very interesting, almost not very interesting it seems, because one guy is just leaving. But you know, I think it's an interesting number, because almost 90%, which is basically, if you sum it up, it's everyone, right? So everyone is more likely to spend more time on a website if video is integrated compared to no video. And that's very important for advertisers, because it shows, it proves that video is actually fostering engagement from us, user engagement. And at the same time, of course, it's important for website owners, content owners, publishers, maybe influencers, if you will, because it shows that you can increase your time spent on a website massively, maybe exponentially, if you integrate video, which is, of course, important, because you want to have more users for a longer period of time on your website in order to build a sustainable distribution business, right? And the more users you have on a website, obviously, the more, what do you get? Traffic, right? Lots of traffic, because video is very bandwidth heavy. We know that. And if you surf on a smartphone and you go through a tunnel or something, or you're sitting, I don't know, like at the cafe, and it's always a pain in the ass because it never works. Right, this is because it's so bandwidth heavy. And the numbers say that by 2022, which is in basically 2 years, if you will, video will account for more than 82% of the global internet traffic, which is a huge number, because it shows you that the whole space, the age of video, the video space in general, is now not only it hasn't only become interesting for us as users, advertisers to basically get the money out of our pockets, or publishers to increase our time spent on their websites. It's also very important for the telco multis, like the infrastructural game players. And these guys, obviously, they are willing to invest lots of money into 5G, 6G, 7G, whatsoever, right? So the space is huge, and you see it here. It's primarily internet video, it's IP video on demand, just a little bit, and then the rest is, what is that, web data, file sharing, gaming, which is basically nothing if you compare it to video. So that's actually a huge number. And the spends, of course, they rise. Let's skip that. The spends are continued to rise because of and that's a chart basically everyone is using in my industry at least, is the gap between money spent and time spent. Like, it always looks like this, and it shows you that here, the blue, this is us. So we continue to consume more video. The traffic is rising, right, online, and the red is the spends. So obviously the buy side, the advertisers, were trying to keep up with our consumption because they want to reach us where we are on a daily basis, but they're always lagging behind because an industry can never react as quickly as a trend can created by users, right? And this is always a good indicator for a trend growing or continuing to grow, I should say. And this is exactly what's happening in the age of video. And this is why the space is so big and so crowded and everyone wants to get in. So basically me, my company, my colleagues over here, we are somewhere here on the line. So we want to get into the space because we want to provide all the actors in the space, which is basically media owners, publishers, but also advertisers, you want to provide them with solutions. So what we then do is we create lots of smart solutions, and then we try to prolong the supply chain and squeeze lots of advertising dollars of every dollar being spent somehow. And some of us, they do so rightfully. That's just a small overview over the market. And others, they basically just sell you stuff you don't need, and then your returns are going to diminish. But this is basically how every industry works. Of course, we are one of the good guys, and this is why we are here right in the center of this chart, okay? What choices in such a crowded space do brands have? That's the question, right? Because we have so many different solution providers. Some of them are shady, others are useless, others are show heroes. But what choices do we have as a brand to reach us as a target audience? And I think here it becomes interesting again, because there are 3 different choices. One choice is social media, which is basically what we all know. And so we all can be reached by social media ads because we all know it. We know it because we visit social media real estate, and this is why we basically become a target group on social media. So usually these are Facebook numbers, you have lots of monthly users, you have excessive targeting. This is what we say in the advertising industry, options, which means when we go into social, we log in with our data, we give away our social demographics, and we know what we're interested in, right? So if they know it, they can target us, and we all have seen this personalized ads already in our news feeds, and this is exactly what social media is good at for a brand, speaking from a brand perspective. Like if you guys would want to sell your products, I mean, how would you basically try to sell it? How would you, with video, try to reach your audiences? If you go for social, this is what you get. Lots of reach, good targeting options. However, the cons is it's also a very uncontrolled environment in the social media space, because social media in general is not controlled by anyone but by the user. So a feed is always personalized. And now it's a little like marketing exercise. I learned that at university years ago, but I think it's still valid. If you have a typical marketing funnel, not sure if you know that, but some of you guys, because it's a very old type of model, you have this funnel, right? And the funnel is very narrow at the bottom and it's broad at the top. And if you do video advertising, what you do is upper funnel marketing. So what you want to do, of course, is reach as many people as possible, but always the most interesting people for you. You don't want to risk all those losses for targeting people that are not really interested in your product, right? And on social media, the problem is that you can reach people at the bottom because they indicate that they're already interested, but if you want to reach them at the top, it's very difficult because you need to build lots of reach if you want to reach people at the top, as many as possible at the same time. But on social media, you always risk advertising in an environment which is not brand safe. And this is what you have read in news, I bet you did so often before. This is always about explicit content on YouTube, like racist content, anti-Semitic content, I don't know, like explicit content. It happens because the medium is not controlled by anyone. It's controlled by the user. So you may have excessive targeting options, but you can't ensure that you reach your broad audience in an environment where you as a brand feel at home and you want to be associated with, right? And then connotation here is key. It's very important because you want the first appearance of your brand at a user's face or a user's mind. You want to be a positive one, not a bad, not a negative connotated one. So alternatively, what you can do is what we call TV. You can do TV on the internet. That's basically it. Like all the video on demand offerings you can buy as an advertiser. Most of them you can't buy because on Netflix and Amazon and stuff, there's no advertising yet. But there is some video on demand on the internet, and of course you can buy it. And last but not least, the third option, and this is basically it, there are no more options. The third option an advertiser may have if they want to advertise on the internet is the so-called outstream. You know what it is? It's basically the annoying video ad that's popping up if you're reading an article. So you're reading an article on a website, and you think, oh no, I'm reading an article. And all of a sudden, there is this video ad like right into your face, and there's no content, there's no context usually, and ideally you can exit out, so it goes away, but this is what they call outstream. And basically this is the industry, they invented it to solve the problem of not enough in-stream inventory. Not enough content, so I don't give a shit about, so excuse my language, I don't give a dime about content. I know just play the video ads out in an article. This is basically what outstream is. And it kind of looks like this. So this is the in-stream. Yeah, there's video content. It's a pre-roll. You can skip it. That's the ad, right? And the ad is over, and now you see like content, tasty food content whatsoever. And here at the right, I'm not running out of time, but they told me I can go a little longer if I want to, if you want to. So, yeah, and this is the outstream ad. You get the idea in the article, and it's just an ad. There is nothing around that. The industry is growing, maybe not for you guys, interesting. Mobile traffic is growing. I think that's really interesting because we need to reach us, the younger audiences, on mobile devices, as I said before. And as you can see here, 2018 compared to 2013, I need to do my math, but 4 times as much. You can see it's growing big time. And now the question is, if I want to reach you, if you want to reach me, we are advertisers, we are brands, if we want to reach each other on mobile devices, because as we said in the beginning of this little session, but we are surfing on mobile to basically watch videos. Well, where would we do that? In the app environment, you should say. But the question is that really the case? Because it is true that 5 of the most dominant apps, they generate app domains, they generate 80% of the overall traffic. So quantity reach you have in the app space on mobile. But what's also true is that it's all messaging, dating, and gaming. So there's not much relevance for like real good video advertising being made around video content that is interesting for us as users, right? So of course, we would love to advertise in an environment that looks like this, because this is basically Netflix, you know, this is video on demand, and it could potentially also take place on mobile. But it does, but we can't advertise there, so the relevance is pretty low, and instead we get this. As an advertiser, we advertise in gaming environments. And in gaming environments, I can tell you one thing, the completion rate, so the VTR, what we say in the advertising industry is the ratio of people watching a video until the end. In the gaming industry, it's very high. You know why? Because it's a thing called rewarded video, you know? I mean, you watch the video till the end, and then you get a sword, or extra points, or another 5 lives, or something like that. So the industry loves to sell and to buy that, because they think, yeah, the metrics, they look fine, you know? Everyone watches the video, but of course no one wants to watch the fucking video. No one wants to watch the boring video. What they want to watch is, I want to play the game, right? So it's questionable if this is really the way to go. We have to question that. What we also have to have a look at, and when I'm done, is TV, you know, because the TV numbers, they are also changing. The TV numbers are moving from, and I think you guys may have a session on that before today already, maybe not. These spends, they are moving towards what we call addressable TV. Here you see the numbers in the US, you can just see it's growing, that's good enough. And it's moving towards OTT. The difference is addressable is just like the TV, which now can be on the internet, on a browser-based type of video consumption. Basically, everyone has that, but no one is really using it. And OTT is the app thing. Like Netflix, for instance, would be like OTT, you know, because you can just install an app somewhere, and the app is totally leaving out the broadcaster of the equation. So usually the broadcaster was the one who was selling the ads and making all the money. With OTT, that's not the case anymore. So OTT is highly disrupting the actual broadcasting industry. And this is why all the broadcasters, they want to get everyone to install like a little set-top box, like a hardware somewhere, because then they are still in control, because basically everything that goes through the set-top box can be sold by them, more or less. I'm not an expert on that field, but you get the idea. So this space is also growing, it's also changing. But in the end of the day, most importantly, to my point of view, to our point of view, is that it's very important that we try to focus these days, now summing up a little bit, on what we call owned and operated inventory, or inventory, which is what a publisher owns and operates. So like a publisher like, I don't know, what's the biggest Latvian newspaper? Say it again? It's not true? Latvia what? Avise. Latvian newspaper, okay. So the Latvian newspaper, that's owned and operated by some Latvian press holding, most likely, right? Those guys were paying the journalists, those guys were printing the paper, those guys were paying the servers, the CDN cost for digital, and those guys, of course, they need to strengthen their own owned and operated inventory, compared to the likes of Google and Facebook, who maybe run the same content that the Latvian newspaper is running, but they don't pay for content creation. They only earn for content distribution, if you see what I mean. And this is why it's so important these days to take a step back and to think, okay, mobile, it's nice, but there's so much app traffic which is fraudy. TV is still on the rise, but we are still not quite there yet. So if I want to advertise as a brand, it's really important that I try to strengthen owned and operated inventory, because publishers who produce content professionally, and not against influencers, it's interesting. It's good that Web 2.0 basically empowers everyone to share knowledge and to contribute to the bigger picture. It's cool, you know? But it's also cool that there are some institutions that try to view things from a different angle and that invest a shitload of money into that industry. And it's also very important that this is being supported by users, A, but B, also it's good for advertisers because the brand safety, the upper funnel problem I was trying to describe, the lack of brand safety, the lack of, in this case, if you look at the publishers, explicit content, but content you can predict, I should say, that is really important if you want to advertise successfully in the age of video as an advertiser. And this is why we need to come back of owned and operated inventory. The wrap up, I can do it very quickly. Video has become the most important medium of the internet. Consumption is skyrocketing, spends are going to follow. Mobile is driving that trend big time, yet advertisers, brands, they struggle to find the right means to advertise because there are so many like fraudy and shady providers in the supply chain, if you will. There are several attractive growing channels, but what should I use, you know? And this is why we should definitely try to, as I said, that was my last point, focus on the owned and operated inventory as advertisers. This was it. I hope you enjoyed this small excursus in the digital media landscape. I tried to make it like, you know, as digestible as possible. If you still have question marks over your heads, feel free to ask me now.
We have a mic, actually. We have a mic. So are there any questions in the audience? Because video is a very interesting topic, and everybody says video is the format you have to do, at least in Latvia, to be on top.
You prepared that, right?
So any questions here? My colleague Lydia will give you the mic. So one question right here. Yep.
Hi. I just wonder, does it work?
Yep.
Yep. Do these video ads that we see, do they actually work for the companies? Because people hate them, they try to skip them. What's the point of having them?
Well, that's actually, I like that, because that type of questions you will never get in a conference that I was yesterday, because that's the industry. You know, the industry always says, of course it works, we need to make more money. And yeah, but that's a very naive question, but I like it, you know, because it's true. I mean, to put it into perspective, that's a core problem of advertising. Like, who likes advertising in general? And this is, and again, I enjoy being here because I would never say that where I'm from, you know, but I don't like advertising either, you know, like basically all the advertisement that is, as a user, I don't care. I X everything out. If I read a newspaper and there's like in the newspaper advertising, I flip the page. So the reason why we need advertising is that it still works in the end of the day. I mean, it is a fact that if you don't spend any money as a company on marketing or advertising budget, you won't sell anything. Or maybe you will, but the scale will be very, very little. If you advertise, at some point your voice will be heard. If you scream often enough, loud enough, someone will buy. And I agree with you, you know, it is annoying, but it is also needed, A, because we need to have some product information still by the end of the day, at least in our society, if we buy into all the consumption patterns that most of us do. So it can really like help from time to time to find out something if you then digest it in a meaningful way. And secondly, it's very important because all the news offerings I was talking about, they are 100% or maybe 80%, they are financed by advertising. And if the advertisers don't pay the publisher for producing the content, you have nothing to read anymore. You have to write all the articles yourself, and that's getting boring after a while. So yeah, I think it's needed.
We have last question right there.
Yes, it's a little bit of ethics question because it's about the regulation for video advertising. Is there any? I'm curious because I have a 2-year-old son and he's watching some cartoons, and I measured one day and it was like every 6 minutes on YouTube channel watching a cartoon, he gets a video ad for, well, it's for toys or similar content. It's very well adjusted, but still.
Yeah,
What do you think about it?
No, that's a very good question. I think, I mean, I don't have kids, you know, so, but I know lots of people who do have kids. And yeah, of course, that's a known problem. On YouTube, I think the reason, I mean, YouTube would always say, you know, you can put it's your responsibility to make sure that your kid is not watching the content in general. So if the content is content for kids, then of course we are allowed to advertise. But the question is, should we maybe put less ads or less ad opportunities, I should say, in content that is clearly designed for kids compared to content that is designed for grown-ups? I'm not even sure if there's any policy on that, but if you tell me that there's ads constantly, because I usually don't watch cartoons for kids on YouTube, maybe I should start. Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's a very interesting argument, and I really think we should at least try to, you know, get it down a little bit, but you know, advertisers will love it, because you will never get a chance to influence a future customer cheaper and easier compared to doing better on YouTube. I mean, it's bad news, but in the end, it's reality. Yeah, it's a good point.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause.
There's one more question. I saw that.
Oh,
no,
one more?
One
well,
more? No?
we're running short on time, but if it's a quick one.
It's a quick one, I'm sure.
Okay, a quick one. Lydia, can we? Nope, no mic no more?
I can get there.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I will try to make it quick. It's not a question, maybe just a comment for you regarding content for kids. So particularly right now, YouTube is rolling out a new law for channels for who have YouTube content, and from new year, you won't see any comments under the videos that are for kids, and they are shutting down personalized ads for kids, for like this kind of content. But it doesn't mean that your kid will not see ads because he's watching YouTube with your account. Yeah? He's not kid. Yeah, but personalized, yeah, they will shut down personalized ads for kids. So this is just a comment about YouTube.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put it together for Ilhan Zengin from SHOWHEROES.
Thank you, guys.